All right, welcome back to This Week in Niche Pursuits News. My name is Jared Bauman, and well, we just found out that Google's March core update is complete. So by the time you're listening to this, it'll have been done for a day or two or three. We're going to dive into the results, the early results, what we can see, what's happened so far. There's a lot of build up to this one. It ended up being 2 weeks, and so we are able to kind of analyze it in a typical fashion. But that's not all. We're still talking about Google, and an article came out in Bloomberg this week titled "Google is searching for an answer to ChatGPT," and it's really a nice, long-winded article that really goes through the process Google has been on in their quest to utilize AI in their search engines. It's got a lot of juicy quotes from past and present Google executives and people who work inside the company. We'll dive into some of the topics there. Many are repeat, many are new, many are some new insights we'll find. There's also lots of AI product launches this week. We've got GPT-4o image generation. Both Thomas and I have thoughts on that. We've got Ideogram 3.0. I know, Thomas, you were saying that you have been testing that. And we've got Google Gemini 2.5 Pro. So we'll touch on those specifically from how it relates to you as content creators and publishers. Of course, side hustles, weird niches. We've got it all. Thomas, how you doing today?
Great. This has been probably one of the most exciting weeks for AI tools for content creators specifically. I mean, there's just been some incredible movement. So yeah, I'm really psyched to talk about that. But there's some new stuff out there that all of us should be using straight away.
Well, you've been emailing quite a bit about it, and I've been trying to keep up with it. We're going to get into it. We'll try to save enough time for you to go through all three of them in depth. I have a feeling you'll have to kind of give us the cliff notes of each, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. Let's first tackle Google's core update and the fact that it's now done. As I mentioned at the outset, it did take 2 weeks, which is more of the standard that we're used to seeing. The March 2025 core update was launched on May 13th and finished rolling out on March 27th. So that was just a couple hours ago from time of recording. Let's see. Here, I have an article up here in SEO Roundtable. And really the high level of it from what it is saying is that some sites got absolutely hammered. Others saw huge lifts in visibility. But at its core, pun intended, the impacts of this one did not seem as widespread as some previous core updates. Now, we might end up seeing that change a bit as more data comes in. We probably don't have a ton of data on the last couple of days of the update. But remember, this is the one that we saw several weeks of buildup and several weeks of volatility prior to the actual launch of it on the 13th of March. Couple new things that came out with this core update that Google told us about, right? So they wrote in their announcement on the 13th that the rollout may take up to 2 weeks to complete. That's pretty standard. That's pretty much how it is. Normally they don't tell us that though. It's just kind of interesting. Two other things they did tell us that are new and that are interesting. They said, quote, regular update designed to better surface relevant, satisfying content for searchers from all types of sites. Interesting, all types of sites, right? We talked about this 2 weeks ago. And then number three, they wrote, quote, to surface more content from creators through a series of improvements throughout this year. So, that we've talked about how does it talk about small publishers? Does it talk about individual content creators rather than just the big dogs? Early days, but if I scroll down here, we can see, is it on this? Let's see. No, I need to go to my next tab. One more tab over, and then I will tell you about some of the big winners and big losers here. Okay, so here we have a tweet from Glenn Gabe, and this was a couple of days ago, but we can see here a couple of the sites in visibility. And really what we're looking at, if you're looking on screen, is that some of this movement really started on the 2nd of March, the 3rd of March, the 5th of March, the 7th of March, but then really took off going on from the 13th on. And so we can see here in this visibility graph, it just really moved quite a bit forward on the 13th. And then it did plateau really around the 20th, 21st, and 24th. Here we have another example of a site that started going up on the 10th of March. Here we have another example of a site that started going up on the 14th of March. Here we have another example of a site that initially went up on the 15th and 16th of March and then flattened from there. And so really, if you're looking at it from a high level, a lot of what happened early on. And I think that was a lot of the sentiment that was being shared. I've got a couple other things to pull up here while I do. Thomas, anything from your side, any comments from what you're seeing on this conclusion of the March core update?
So what I've seen on my side is a lot of big changes on sites that have used or suspected to use a lot of AI content or programmatic SEO. So that's just something I've seen in the articles there, and I've observed too, is that these sites that kind of spun up thousands of pages programmatically have seen that content drop off. And I've seen that in the news space too, interestingly. Obviously, that's one I follow pretty closely because that's where one of my main sites is. But I'm seeing that news sites where they're kind of aggregators, they're not writing original stuff. Maybe they're using AI to write some of their news stories, saw drops, and particularly drops in discover traffic. That was kind of the big area people saw a hit. Versus sites that write really long form, kind of well-researched and original news content saw a big lift. And I can give some specific examples of sites where I saw that. The other big thing, as we're seeing on the screen here, I totally agree, forums saw a big shift. And I think, we all saw after the HCU that Google loved forum sites. And they were elevating, old forums from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Posts were ranking in the top 10 or higher. And people just started kind of tripping over themselves to add forums to their niche sites to try to take advantage of that. And for a while, that did seem to work. And what we've seen here is that some of the bigger and more established sites, for example, of course, Reddit, seems to be seeing gains, at least from what I was looking at. But that some of those kind of smaller and more niche forums, particularly ones where they were older, or they probably shouldn't have been elevated, or people just tacked them on to get a boost, those have started to drop off. So kind of a pruning or an adjustment on there. And then the final one that is mentioned in this Search Engine Journal article we're seeing here is that when it comes to retailer sites, the kind of big generalist retailers seemed to see a drop. So, Amazon, for example, saw a drop, but very specific brands seemed to see a boost. So, if you are a shoe brand and people are searching for a particular type of shoe that you make, you probably saw some gains there. But again, these sort of generalist retailers that had gotten a boost post-HCU gave some of that back. So I agree with the assessment overall that this wasn't an update with a big theme, right? It wasn't like HCU where I was like, all right, let's get rid of all the blogs, clear all the blogs out. It seems like it's much more targeted, but for the sites that were impacted, there's big impacts, either positive or negative.
Yeah, we have on screen here some of the winners: Reddit and Quora, HomeDepot.com, Yelp.com. Obviously, Reddit, Quora, Yelp, kind of more in the UGC type category. Reddit had been, going through a little bit of a pullback leading into this Quora update. Don't have it in front of me how much they gained back, but certainly that was one of the first pullbacks we've seen. It's interesting to note though, because like you said, the big air quote, the big forum-esque sites, the big UGC sites like a Reddit, like a Quora won. But then to your point, like in one of my niches, some of the topics had gotten literally dominated by 10 different old school forums where a blog post used to rank. And that has been the case since the HCU. Some of these forums aren't even updated, right? But they just had a mention of this specific query in their forum. And Google was just in love with these niche forums. I checked that search query this morning, and that was a lot different, right? There were only about 2 of those forums left. I think a couple other things to highlight here that I thought was interesting is, where is it? I don't know if I can find it, but basically, Quora in the UK though dropped, and so this I haven't seen anybody talking about how this related across different countries and different regions and even different languages. But that's something that I thought was interesting that this article pointed out. We got this thing about programmatic content. I'm glad you mentioned it. Sites like, just basically, which appears to have created thousands of programmatic pages. These types of sites seem to have seen visibility declines. Other sites with kitchen sink made it for SEO content are similarly affected. That's an interesting phrase. We could dive deep into that one. I think by and large, to your point, Thomas, this definitely seemed to have some big impacts. When you're Amazon and you drop 14%, you can't say that this core update didn't have an impact. Like that's a massive drop for a brand of its size. This update had some teeth. It didn't seem to have a broad stroke take on things though. It definitely seemed to be more a little bit in the weeds in terms of what it targeted. And we still have a little bit of time to see what the ripple effects are. One final thought on it. Didn't see many impacts from a broad level. You talked about how AI generated pages at scale might have dropped, but we didn't see much more beyond that for small publishers as it relates to the initial commentary I brought up when Google launched this update.
I think they kind of hinted that this might be testing the waters or kind of just starting this process, and that this is something that's going to unfold over the rest of the year. So I think that this showed us some directions they might be going. Again, pruning back some of the forum sites. But if we're starting to see some of that programmatic and kind of AI generated content at scale drop off a bit, and we're starting to see some of the more human created content, especially in the news space, elevated. calmatters.org is one site that I've been following. It's it's a nonprofit news site, long form content, human written, and it got a big bump. So things like that seem to be gaining. Yeah. I think this may not be the big update of 2025, but I still think the direction that we're seeing here is the direction Google's going to continue to take. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if they double down with something even bigger, going the same way towards kind of elevating the creator content that's good, high quality, human written, not programmatic, elevating the brands that are specific, elevating the forums that are very targeted to, topics or just have a ton of traffic. So I think it's testing the waters, but I think we're going to see this direction continue.
Good point. Yeah, we definitely saw some strands that look like it could be related to that. And we just need to wait and see as they pull the strings on those strands and see if they go further on them. Well, from one Google topic to the next, this next story that came out, I believe was released initially on Bloomberg. I've seen it on LinkedIn. I've seen it across the board. And it's a very long article. So I did read it and I do have notes on it. Can't go through the whole thing though. So we'll try to give you the high level. The title is Google is searching for an answer to ChatGPT. And the subtitle is big changes are underway for the internet's most popular product, and Google and the web may never be the same. I think that it's probably easiest. I first saw this article from a Glenn Gabe tweet. And so I thought I'd share his tweet because that's kind of what caught my eye. And Glenn's not much for the dramatic, but he said, okay, stop and read this article. So I did. I'll just read kind of some of the things that he said. Very important for anyone in search. A profile of veteran Googler Liz Reed, who became head of search in March 2024, 1 year ago, and has subsequently rolled out major updates like AI overviews as Google competes with ChatGPT. And here are some quotes from, let's see, I don't know who, we'll get into who it's from, but these are from people inside Google. Quote, supporting publishers has always been incidental to Google's larger aims, according to one former senior executive. Quote, giving traffic to publishers' sites is kind of a necessary evil. The main thing they're trying to do is get people to consume Google services, former executive says. Quote, so there's a natural tendency to want to have people stay on Google pages, but it does diminish the sort of deal between the publishers and Google itself, end quote. Now, Google went on to contest this characterization. However, as Glenn says here, AI overviews may take it to its logical conclusion. Because Google's AI is trained on the web, its answers are a kind of remixed version of the web itself, while also distorting the economy that gave rise to the modern internet by potentially cutting the sites out of the equation entirely. One or two more sound bits here that Glenn pulled out, although I have some other things to talk about. Quote, Reed predicts that the traditional Google search bar will become less prominent over time. Voice queries will continue to rise, she says, and Google is planning for expanded use of visual search as well. A couple other things, but I think I'll pause there and then go to the quotes I pulled out. Thomas, your thoughts on this pretty deep dive of the last 5 or 6 years of the journey that Google's been on?
I think it's absolutely true that Google has seen the writing on the wall that, hey, if we can create the content with AI ourselves, then we don't have to send traffic out to publisher sites. And from a business perspective, that means more ads that they can show, you stay on the platform. And I think we've seen this in social too. We've seen this on Facebook. Before, Facebook was sending traffic out to people's articles, people's websites. Yeah, you can still do that, but there's this push within Facebook to keep people on the platform, keep them, engaging. Mm-hmm. We've seen that on YouTube. I mean, for the longest time, it's been about watch time. How much watch time can they accumulate? Keep people on the platform. Google has always been unique in sending you away from their own product, from their own revenue generating product. And again, I think for them, it was, quote, a necessary evil, right? If people wanted the content and the information, they had to send them away. And they kind of got around that a bit by owning Chrome, being able to show ads across a giant ad network that they built on other people's sites. But I think they're seeing now that might not be necessary for them. And I think AI overviews was the first kind of baby step in that direction. But I don't know if you've gotten access to it yet. Just this last week, I got access to the AI mode that I know you and Spencer talked about in a bunch of detail a couple episodes ago. And it's wild. It is literally like you took Perplexity and just dropped it at the top of the SERPs. It replaces the Google experience completely with an AI chatbot that just writes blog posts, as a response to your query, essentially, with citations that are very minimal. So yeah, I completely agree that this is the direction Google seems to be going. I think the article is spot on that. And I think it's something that we've all started to see in this industry, and maybe we've wondered if it's going to reverse. I think this shows pretty clearly that's the direction they're going towards, more and more AI replacing the creator content there.
The article talks about the buildup to AI overviews and really how they were sideswiped by ChatGPT. It talks about how Google, once hesitant to disrupt its core search model, is now racing to catch up. Back in 2021, Google's own engineers proposed a chatbot interface for search. Leadership rejected it, worried that it wasn't accurate. Well, it's not. But anyways, and more importantly, that it didn't serve ads. And so they kind of had, apparently, in 2021, had this idea of what is AI mode now, but rejected it because it was too disruptive to their cash cow. And so it took something like ChatGPT coming along and proving that they had disruption to make Google go back and then, basically pour all their efforts into it. And there was a lot about that. I thought that was really interesting. It also talks towards the end about the kind of the some of the antitrust stuff, right? Like how the blend between the search department and the ad department became more and more pronounced. It talked about Chegg suing Google for copying educational content wholesale. Here's some quotes on the ad and search department from Ben Gomes, former Google search chief, in a leaked email. I think we read this out loud many months ago. I think we are getting too involved with ads for the good of the product and the company. Here's another quote from a former manager recalling internal debates. How we'll just leave the word out. Do we put an ad on it? And so it kind of circles the wagons nicely on all these topics, how Google got here, what it's doing right now and why it thinks it's the future, but then also how it plays into some of the larger issues, the antitrust lawsuit, the competition, et cetera, et cetera.
I think it's a reminder in our community, this is the direction that search is going, whether we like it or not, right? I mean, this is not only Google, but obviously the Perplexities and the Search GPTs and all those of the world. And now Claude has search capabilities as of last week. So this is the direction it's going. So this is the competition, and we may continue to get traffic. Again, I think there's areas where they're continuing to surface creator content relatively aggressively, and those things that are more like news and original reporting. But by and large, it makes a lot of sense if you're Google looking at it and saying, hey, I can just replace all of this with AI. And I think, in our community, we look at the quality of AI overviews and we go, this isn't very good. Like, I can write something way better than that, way more engaging. If you talk to a civilian, normal person using Google, people love it. They might not even know that it's different. It's just, I asked, Google what happened with the Giants this weekend, and they gave me the answer. And, it's fantastic. So I think it's, there's a little bit of a disconnect and maybe a little bit of a kind of unwillingness in our community to just kind of look at this and go, okay, this is what we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have to adjust. We're going to have to focus more on building an audience where we are in control of it. We're going to have to focus on building a brand people love and engage with. We might have to put ourselves out on the camera and put our own personality into our brands a little bit. That's terrifying. I just think this article really sums up beautifully what's been happening, not just recently, but over the last, 6-7 years, even within Google, and kind of paints the direction that they're going. So I think Glenn is totally right. It's a great read. We probably know a lot of it already. We probably don't want to hear a lot of it in this community, but I think it highlights kind of the direction we need to go to respond.
Well, we'll put the link in the show notes for everybody who wants to go read the entire thing. It does go through, as you said, the last 6 to 7 years, and really maybe looking forward as well. Transitioning to our next topic, instead of talking about the last 6 to 7 years, let's talk about the last 6 to 7 days. Thomas, I'll turn it over to you. We got a lot of launches in terms of AI. You talk about how it's one of the biggest weeks And I think it's one of the biggest weeks, not because of any one singular launch, because we had like 3 big launches in the span of 7 days.
Absolutely. And not only were these launches that were really exciting, but they are specifically exciting to creators. I think people outside of our space might not even realize that anything happened. Like, this isn't a ChatGPT event, but these things are really, really helpful to us. So the 3 I'll talk about are the GPT-4o image generation that came out, I think, 2 days ago. On basically the same day, Ideogram, which is a fantastic image generator, one of my favorites, released their 3.0 version, so the most updated version. And then, not to be outdone, Google came out with Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is their most powerful reasoning model. And again, like in the span of a week. So let me go through them. And I also want to break down specifically what they're good for us, because I think that's what people are going to get the most value out of. So GPT-4o image generation, it's a natively multimodal image generator built into ChatGPT. So what does that mean? Before, you had ChatGPT that was responding with text. And then if you asked for an image, it would hand that request off to DALL-E, which was frankly awful. I mean, the images in there were really bad. They were exciting in the beginning, and then they just never kept up. So nobody used it. They used Midjourney, they used other tools. And OpenAI has now completely changed that up. So rather than having 2 systems, one to handle text and one to handle images, they are actually using the same model to do both. And that means that this new system built into GPT-4o can understand what you're asking for in a prompt way better than any other image generator out there. It can understand nuances of exactly like how to position things in an image, visual concepts you want to convey, the feel of the image, that kind of thing. It can iterate. So if it doesn't get it right on the first try, you can say, oh no, like that's good, but I want it to have more of a blue tone here. I want to have this part of it be a little bit different, or different facial expression. And before, if you did that, it would basically start fresh. Like Midjourney is kind of creating a new image with each query. So if you found something you liked, you couldn't keep it. Now with this, you can keep it. And you can basically just keep iterating. You can almost edit the image in real time in ChatGPT with text prompts. So that's fantastic. And then text, it can handle incredibly well. So one thing I've been using it for right off the bat, you can actually hand it a whole blog post or a chunk of data or whatever and say, make an infographic. And it will actually create a full infographic with all of it all the steps of your process broken down, statistics pulled out, images to illustrate it, and all the text is accurate and beautiful. It can handle like a whiteboard's worth of text generation. So if you're doing, if you're a niche site creator and you have like a travel article and you want to break down all the places you say to go and categorize them, you can make an infographic for it instantly, basically, and feed it in. And things you would have spent an hour doing in Canva, and just generate it and go. I experimented. You can create boring images with it. This is something that AI image generators have always been awful at. Everything they make is so kind of beautiful and produced. And for people who are trying to create kind of authentic sites, things that look realistic, it doesn't work well. And I've spoken to people, or people have commented to me, hey, if I wanted this kind of content, I had to literally buy a stock image and then go in Photoshop and like make it look bad so that it looked like a cell phone image. Now you can actually create kind of normal looking images using this tool. So super powerful. It's available now in ChatGPT, I think for everybody at the plus level and up. Ideogram 3.0, very different. It hasn't mastered that piece of the sort of prompt understanding and image generation aspect there, but it has gotten a lot better at text, and it is fantastic for tasks like generating YouTube thumbnails, because you can dial in a specific aspect ratio, visual styling, that kind of stuff. It's a much more sort of designer focused tool, I would say. Like if you are a graphics designer or you have strong opinions about graphics design, it can be harder to realize that with something like the new 4.0 image generation. It's only really making like square images most of the time. Ideogram, you can dial in design language, that kind of stuff. And I can ask it for like a super compelling YouTube thumbnail with text that says whatever for this topic with this graphic in the background. And it'll create it at the YouTube aspect ratio, download the PNG, upload it, and I'm good to go. And again, a process that I would have hand it off to a graphics designer or tweaked in Photoshop for hours, I can just go ahead and create it with the Diagram 3. Final one, Google Gemini 2.5 Pro. This is brand new. This is Google's newest reasoning model. And it's basically like, Claude 3.7 or GPT-01 Mini or GPT 4.5, but it's their new version of that. So it reasons, it's a thinking model, they call it, spends more time going through the query, and it's super powerful. I have found that it's really good at kind of data analysis, like basically analyzing business data. So I've handed it, for example, the top performing videos in my YouTube channel and said, based on this, come up with new video ideas. And it's done a great job of thinking through that, breaking down and giving me a summary. Okay, this is why these videos succeeded. This is what your audience likes. Here's 10 more ideas for videos that'll do well. And a lot of them are really good. Like I was inspired to stand up and go start shooting stuff basically after reading its ideas. So again, if you ask, your family member coming, sitting down this weekend, what happened in AI this week, they're not going to notice any difference. But if you are in our space, these are huge, huge, exciting changes.
One big question from your point of view that comes out of this now that ChatGPT actually has some sort of model that creates images that, like you pointed out, like before DALL-E was just a train wreck, especially early days was fun and exciting, but really that waned very quickly. Now that it can actually compete, like when would you use a ChatGPT 4.0? When would you use a Midjourney? When would you use an ideogram?
I like GPT 4.0 for anything where there's a lot of text or where there's kind of, you need to lay out the text in an interesting way in sort of one shot. Like you can literally drop in, again, a bunch of data or statistics and get an infographic out of it. If you're a creator and you want to make a comic book, you can take a story and put it in there and it'll make a comic book complete with little, the different frames, characters, speech bubbles with accurate text. It can do some pretty awesome stuff there. So anything with text, and then anything also where you want more realistic looking images. And I mean realistic, not photorealistic, but realistic, like you shot them on your cell phone.
Right.
You want something to post on social or something like that looks like a real photo. A diagram, I think, is, again, great for anything where you have a graphics design concept and you want to be able to dial that in. Because with that, you can select a specific visual style. You can even upload a style reference image for it to follow. And you can say, okay, I want like a 16:9, or I want a 4:3. I want it to be a line drawing. I want it to be, there's a lot you can do. You can, there's a canvas function where you can highlight chunks that you want to change and edit things. So if you have a design background or you have design ideas, but you have no idea how to do graphics design, which is more like me, then I think that's the best tool. Midjourney, I still love for sort of the artistic weirdness of it. It's still the best at creating just kind of like bizarre images that are just artistically interesting or stunning or just visually captivating. I use it for, if I'm going to do an article illustration, for example, and I want something that's just really cool looking, really captures my visual concept, but I'm going to have to do all the work of prompting it. I find Midjourney still best at that.
Whew, a lot going on. I feel like we could do an entire podcast on just some of the updates and some of the changes. We'll leave it there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the YouTube comments. I'll try to get some of those answered for you. But yeah, big week. I'm excited to dive in and try. I have not gotten access to AI mode yet, but I have gotten access to GPT 4.0 image creation. I've had some fun with that.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. So you probably know the importance of building internal links so your site can perform well in Google. Today I want to share how Link Whisper can help you add outbound internal links to your articles. As you draft your article in WordPress, Link Whisper scans your site, identifying the best internal link opportunities. It then recommends the perfect anchor text and link to add. With just a click, your content is updated with new internal links. No more expensive tools or tedious manual site searches. Link Whisper does the heavy lifting right inside the WordPress editor. Say goodbye to the hassle of internal linking. With Link Whisper, you can focus on what you do best, creating great content. Use the coupon code PODCAST today and get $15 off. Elevate your website's internal linking with Link Whisper now. Building smart internal links just got easier. Go to linkwhisper.com today and be sure to use coupon code PODCAST to get $15 off.
All right. Well, hey, let's talk side hustles. What do you think? I'm going to give an update today on my my quest to create calculator websites. I said at the beginning of the year that I was going to do 5, and I have all 5 launched now. Nice. Now it's end of March, right? So I got them done within the first part of the year. Will I do more? I don't know. Let me go ahead and give you an update on what I'm kind of where we're at, what I'm doing, and maybe you at least can weigh in on what you think here. I don't know whether to call them a success or not. It's hard to say. So the first 3 were launched in the middle to end of January. I got 3 done by the end of the month. Just a quick kind of catch up on where those are. Let's see. The first site, the first calculator that I launched, ranks number 9 for its target keyword. So on the first page, but as we all know, spot 9, barely getting any traffic. And so that's what we see. I see consistent traffic coming in both through Search Console and through Google Analytics, but not very much because of where it ranks. Second calculator site, going after a little bit bigger of a keyword. That ranks number 17 for its target term, so bottom of page 2. Also getting a little bit of traffic. It's funny because the search volume is higher. It is getting some search traffic, but about the same amount of traffic overall. So higher search volume, but bottom of page 2. Both of those are getting traffic on the daily. The third one that I launched at the end of January, that was the one that took off and started ranking for hundreds of keywords. Ironically, as Google does, that has pulled back and doesn't really rank for much of anything now. It's almost like Google ranked it and its supporting pages for a bunch of topics and then pulled it back immediately, pulled it back a couple weeks later. So that doesn't even rank for its target term. I still think it could. It's doing that Google dance that we see happen. I launched number 4 and number 5 over the past 7 to 10 days or so. Here's a tweet that I shared. Here's something I shared on my Twitter. This was yesterday. And so this is a screenshot of GSC on day 7. So this is the 7th day after I launched calculator site number 4. And everything's indexed. So the homepage with the calculator is indexed. And then this one has, I think, 5 or 6 supporting articles. Those are all indexed and already getting traffic. Now, not much, 1 page view every other day. But it's fascinating, of course. And then site number 5, calculator site number 5, was launched just 3 days ago. And homepage already getting indexed and got its first visit today. So it's interesting. I think from a high level, as I said from the beginning, this is going to be a slow burn. But I think now we're starting to look at the couple months in on the first 3 calculator websites. I think they're going to take some link building in order to get into the top 3 to 5 positions. I think that it's starting to settle in roughly where it's going to be without a little bit of work. I don't think it's going to take necessarily a ton of link building, but I also think it needs time. A lot of what it's competing up against are sites that have been out for a while. They don't have a very good user experience. They don't necessarily have a lot of backlinks on the whole, but they've been around for a while. And we'll see if I can get one of these to move. I don't want to put too much time and effort into them. But now I have 5 live targeting search volumes everywhere from 170 a month to 46,000 a month. And so I think now the great experiment really starts is to see how these kind of go as time goes on.
I'm wondering here, if that was the first thing that occurred to me, if time is a big factor. And I think you saw this initial bump and then a drop. And I wonder if you're kind of almost following the traditional SEO trajectory, which hasn't existed for most of us in the info space for a while. But this kind of feels like what SEO content looked like 4 or 5 years ago, where you had the honeymoon phase, right? Like the first month of launching a new site, you could just rank for anything. I think we've seen with the Google leak and learning more about the algorithm that they prioritize recency a lot, new stuff, like get it out there, it's new, let's see what people think of it. So you saw that initial bump, and I think a lot of content sites saw that back in the day. Now it's a lot more muddled, but you got this big bump in the beginning, and then you got in the sandbox, right? And that was like a 6 month to 1 year time period, which again, Google says doesn't exist, but we all know exists. And it would you couldn't rank for anything. It was like you're just waiting this out. And then at the maybe like 9 month to a year mark, depending on like you hinted at how many links you build, you'd start to get out of that sandbox and then kind of move up. So I haven't seen that trajectory for a little while. It's kind of refreshing. It's like a throwback to see a site following that path. But that to me feels like where you are, is like you got the honeymoon, you're getting the honeymoon on some of these new sites, it sounds like. Then you're in the sandbox, you're just going to have to wait it out. And we're going to be looking at this, 9 months from now and saying, okay, traffic's slowly building now.
Yeah, it's interesting to what you're talking about, it certainly has followed that effect. I'd say on the positive, everything has gotten indexed right away and stayed indexed. And that's a big concern these days. Like getting stuff indexed is not easy like it used to be, and so this stuff has gotten indexed to a T, all 5 sites indexed, supporting content indexed, and stayed indexed. And to your point, like site 1 and 2 have kind of rounded where they still are getting traffic and rankings, but it's just going to take a while to get it to where it's measurable, and then site number 3 definitely did that big Google dance of, big up, big down. We'll have to see on sites 4 and 5, but yeah, it definitely is mirroring from afar. It's mirroring a lot of what we used to see. And that's fine. Like, we can, I run an SEO agency. We can do some online marketing for these sites over time. We can fit that in as part of our greater process of helping other businesses. And so I'm kind of like, this is kind of what I expected, which is if I want to go back and listen to the tape on when I first launched these back in January, but it feels very much like what I expected. Like, let's put 5 to 10 out there. Let's build them right. Let's, do a little bit of online marketing or digital marketing where it makes sense. And then let's just sit back and wait and watch, and put our time and effort towards other things. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at. I'll keep people updated about sites 4 and 5 as we go, how that's doing as it relates to 1, 2, and 3. And I'll check in on this every once in a while, but there we have it. 5 live, like I was hoping to do this year, got it done in Q1.
Congrats. Yeah. That's awesome to get them all out so quickly. One thing that it makes me think, if creating them seems like it's the easy part, right? It's the ranking them. I wonder, could you add to the experiment, putting one of these kinds of calculators on an existing site that's already doing well, already ranking well? Because that would be really interesting to see if it is literally just, this is a new domain, they're still trying to figure out, like, I wonder if you bought a site recently or you have a site that's done okay through the HCU and all of that, where you could drop one of these in and just see, does it immediately pick up, traffic? Is like the combo of calculators that Google loves and like established sites that they love. Does that kind of make for a killer combo?
I'm excited to also apply this to my clients, like now that we kind of have this down to a science, like we work with a lot of, say, local businesses, right? Like I'm thinking of a construction company we work with that does construction, landscaping construction. And people are always wondering, like, how much is my project going to cost? What elements of my project add more to the bill versus less? Like, these are the things I talk about on my monthly call with that client. Build a calculator, drop it on their site, and see what it does for a local construction company. Could that really help be a lead generator? Could that help just gain them additional exposure, more real estate in the SERPs? So I agree with you. Let's see, now that it's easier to create this type of stuff, where we can apply it, especially as it relates to my agency and helping our clients grow. This construction company, we've already managed to get them a lot more exposure, and they've grown quite a bit since they started working with us, but this is a new opportunity.
I think that's the most exciting piece, because right now there's too many variables, which is what we always run into, right? Is it calculators? Is it the niches you've chosen? Because I don't know exactly which ones you've done, but I imagine it's a broad set, maybe not things you know as well. So it's kind of like, is it niche selection? Is it just general SEO waiting out, getting the rankings kind of raised up? Is it a lack of links on them? But you could eliminate a lot of those variables by dropping this into an existing site. And yeah, I think it would be awesome to see how that ends up performing. It gets me thinking about, if you're going for a local angle, yeah, there's probably all kinds of, I'm thinking for my own site, focusing on the Bay Area, like, could you do a traffic calculator? Which bridge should I use? Like, all these different things come to mind that wouldn't work at a kind of global scale to rank at top. But if it's like, okay, which bridge in the Bay Area, maybe Google would rather rank a calculator or some kind of simple tool for that versus just another info article about it.
Well, then it
definitely got me thinking.
We have the tools at our disposal now to kind of try some of these things that before would have been potentially cost prohibitive. But to your point, like this experiment, we'll see where it goes, but it's also shown me getting my hands my hands and feet wet with it has now shown me the possibilities it could have on other areas. And so I think that's also, you never know what these things are going to create in terms of the other things that come out of them. So we'll see where that goes. But there you have it. Thomas, over to you. What are we talking about today? I'm, like I told you before we hit record, like I kind of came into this agenda pretty last minute, pretty coming in hot. So I haven't actually looked at your side hustle and I haven't looked at your weird niche. So I'm coming in just like the listeners.
Awesome. Yeah. So this week I'm sharing an update on my AI in real life newsletter and brand. So I talked about this, I think about a month ago, that I had this newsletter and I had it in Kit for the longest time. I'd grown it to a bit under 3,000 subscribers, and I was writing very, very periodically about kind of a broad range of topics about AI and content creation and SEO and stuff, but I'd never really kind of leaned into it. And so I had decided to move it over to Beehive. That was the big technical change, and also really focus it in on practical uses of AI. So that's the AI in real life concept. And I'm, I think, about a month in at this point. So I just want to share an update on it. So yeah, moved it over to Beehive. That has been fantastic. It's a much easier kind of platform to use for this broadcast format. Like you type an email out and you send it and it goes out to everybody, where you don't need the automation. The Kit is fantastic for automation and segmenting, and like somebody clicks a link and they end up in this segment and then they get into this sequence and all that. But if you just want to write and then press a button and send it out, Beehive, the emails are great. It's all sort of text format. They're super easy to write in the interface that they have. And they also have a sponsorship program straight through the newsletter, where you can basically get connected to sponsors and then you get paid for how many people click on the sponsor message. That's been going really well. I don't have numbers to share in terms of the overall revenue so far, but I've been consistently getting sponsors, and it seems like that the number of clicks I'm getting on it seem good, and it seems like it'll be an opportunity where on a list this size, I can at least make a couple $100 a month just from that, maybe more. Some of these individual sponsors alone could generate me a couple $100 a month each. So it's not as much as if you went out and recruited a giant sponsor for, headline sponsor for your message, but they're really legit companies that are sponsoring. I mean, Beehive itself, but different AI newsletters have been sponsoring. Huel, the protein drink that people talk about a lot, is sponsored. And it's just so easy because they drop in their ad in there and then you get paid based on the clicks. And so pretty much whenever, it's been kind of motivating me to write more, I would say. Whenever I get offered one, it's like, okay, I have something to say about AI today. I'll just spin something up. And before I know it, I have, a 500 or 1,000 word post and just sort of rattling off what comes to mind, particularly this last week with everything happening in AI. So based on that, I've also been kind of trying to promote it more aggressively. So I've been putting links with lead magnets into more of my Medium articles, sharing this out on Twitter, and posting more of the sort of teasing, what I'm going to talk about. So I am up to 3,542 subscribers. So I've had a nice bump, like about 500, over 500 new subscribers in the last month. So that's been, really nice to see that growth starting to happen there. The metrics are looking really solid. It's about a 45% open rate and about a 3 to 7% click rate, which doesn't, the click rate isn't as big as some of the other newsletters I've done, but most of the content here is in the newsletter itself. So there's not so much to click on. And I think the most interesting thing to me of this is that there's been this side effect with it where I created this list. I started talking about AI, kind of like what happened with you in Weekend Growth. I started a YouTube channel, just like how you started a website, to kind of just put I needed videos. Like I needed to talk about this stuff on video, and I needed to have videos I could drop into my newsletter. So I spun up a YouTube channel, AI in Real Life, to put these videos on. And I never intended it to be more than just, okay, host the videos essentially for me to put in the newsletter. Well, lo and behold, by doing that and creating videos for the newsletter, now that YouTube channel is starting to grow faster than the YouTube channel experiments I've been doing. So it's now picked up like 146 watch hours in the last 28 days. For context, you need about 306 watch hours, so 4,000 over the course of the year, 306 per 28 days to reach monetization. So if I stay at this pace, I'll be monetized. Basically, if I can like keep growing at this rate and get to 300 watch hours in 28 days instead of the 146, I can end up with a monetized channel. Some of the videos are getting thousands of views just through YouTube recommending them once the newsletter goes out. So it's been super fascinating because on the one hand, I'm getting paid by the sponsorship program, but it's also proving to be this great way to grow a YouTube channel.
You know, I'm so glad you pulled it all together because that's kind of was the theme of last week. Like weekend growth was, hey, it's a newsletter. That's the goal. It was a tight goal. And that started going out. We talked about the effects of the newsletter and what that had in terms of sponsorship, affiliate, et cetera. But then there's that YouTube channel. There's the monetization of the website. There's all this other stuff that came with it without it being the goal. It's kind of funny to hear you talk about this was just a newsletter and now you have a YouTube channel and a newsletter. I mean, are you going to try to grow this with any extended plans beyond what you're doing? I mean, you're emailing from what I can tell pretty consistently. So, and I know you've talked about that for several months or several weeks now. It's just much easier to email. And so you're just doing it more.
Yeah, I've been trying to do, I haven't had really set a specific cadence, but it's been 3 to 4 a week at this point. And again, that is a product of the ease of just, you don't have to deal with like formatting and trying to get everything perfect and putting images in or anything. You literally just pull it up and start typing. And I like that. It makes it, the frictionless experience has been really great. And then even if it's not a ton of money, just that motivating factor of I publish this email and I'm going to see 3 days later I get paid, some amount. And I don't know the exact amount till the end of the month. So I have no idea what the overall impact there is, but it'll be hundreds of dollars. And, that's just, there's something motivating about that. And just tying the brands together more, I think is what I'm going to try to do. The one thing I did that I think has been super helpful, I had this domain aiautomateit.com that I registered at one point. I think I intended to build a content site around it. I never got around to it. So I just directed that to the newsletter landing page to sign up. And that has been so helpful. Like it's such a simple thing. You just set up a forwarding system in GoDaddy, but it's been super helpful because when I do a YouTube video, I can say at the end, and hey, you want to join my newsletter, go to aiautomateit.com. And I don't have to put the link in the description. I don't have to say like, go to, this site.com/newsletter and then scroll down and put it literally, it's like one domain. It goes literally right to the landing page. And I never thought that would be a big game changer, but just the ease of being able to promote it in video has been, I think, huge, and a part of why it's starting to grow at a pretty nice clip.
Well, it's fun to watch this go along because this really feels like something where it's like, hey, I have an interest in something. I have an expertise in it. I'm just going to start doing it. So there it is. Here we have this great little side hustle. We'll have to hear how much you're making on the ads in the coming months as you get some data back from that.
Totally. Yeah. I'm excited to know too. Yeah. Believe me. I'm seeing it and they give me a report, but it's like, this is preliminary data. You've gotten this number of clicks at this rate. So it could be this, but it could be more or less. So yeah, we'll see when I actually get it. I believe I know 21 days after the end of the month or something. So yeah, I should have data to report back soon.
Good. All right. Well, hey, it's on to the weird niche segment. We've had some good ones the last couple of weeks. Untangling of an untangling service. I mean, I could go through all the different ones we've had, but there have been some fun ones. Today, I'm going to share something called Music Map, and the website is music-map.com. And it's part of a global network of discovery, or GNOD. We'll get into that in a little bit. But basically, it's a very simple website. No ads, by the way, that I can find, at least on the homepage. We'll get into that as we kind of start to utilize it. But it basically has just a big search box, feels very Google-esque, says to type the name of an artist to find it on the map. So I was playing around with this. I'm going to type a popular artist and a band I like a lot that's kind of been around for a while, U2. All you have to do is type it in. As soon as you're done, it begins to search and come up with this map. Now, you'll see if you're watching on screen that you see a map of a whole bunch of other different brands, and it's kind of moving in real time. Little visual aspect there. It says on the left, people who like U2 might also like these artists. The closer two names are, the greater probability people will like both artists. Click on any name to travel along. So it's interesting because U2 is in the center. And then very close to U2 is, I'd say the closest is Oasis, which is kind of like a British version of U2 in many ways. And then I find this weird, REM, which is like an 80s band that I have to admit I also like quite a bit. You've also got related to that is the Police. You've got the Killers. You've got Coldplay. These are all bands that I have to admit I have listened to on and off over the years. I can click in. Let's click in here on Oasis. And then when I go over to Oasis, it regenerates another map for me, right? And now I've got U2, which is close to them, and REM, but I've also got Blur. I've got Coldplay, which has moved closer. I've got Keane, which is another great British band. I've got Travis. So maybe like I'll go for one out here on the edge. Here's Snow Patrol. I know they're a European band. They're not British. And now we've got Snow Patrol in the middle. And so on and on we can play this game. It's really fascinating. It's really fun. Here's what I think is cool. Most of the bands I see on here in the close circle, I recognize, right? But as I start to get out towards not the edges, but just maybe the second orbit, I start to see bands I've never heard of. I mean, here we have Snow Patrol. I've heard of all the bands that are super close by, but here's one, Walking on Cars, Razorlight, City in Color. I haven't heard of those bands, or maybe I have. And so this would be a great way to check out new bands that you haven't heard of before, but that apparently, according to their map, and I don't know how they get their data, they find to be close in listenership. Thomas, maybe we can play with you if you don't mind. Give a band that I can type in here.
Well, it's so funny because I think we've just discovered one more commonality we have. My original one was going to be REM because that's my all-time favorite band. So I think we have that in common.
Yes.
But we already saw something. So let's put in Paul Simon. That's the other one that I would do. And I'm wondering if what we're going to see in sort of this like more folk direction.
Okay, good. I like a good Paul Simon. Of course. What would you?
Simon and Garfunkel.
Simon and Garfunkel is probably the closest, but there's also another one that's super close. Fleetwood Mac. As you get a little further out, you get Neil Young, you get Bruce Springsteen, you get Billy Joel, Dire Straits, Steely Dan, of course. But then you can start to see, look at the connection there. REM is on the map, probably in like the third orbit out, if you will. I'm guessing on these orbits. But yeah, any other names kind of strike you here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, David Bowie, love David Bowie. I see Leonard Cohen in there. Yeah, Joni Mitchell. It's interesting. It's like you have, obviously Simon and Garfunkel is going to be close, but Fleetwood Mac being very close is interesting. And then I'm looking at, so just like you, I want to look towards the outside and see, are there any more obscure artists that I see coming out there that I know? Yeah. I mean, definitely like it seems to create this orbit of other individual folk singers, essentially, of the era. You got Neil Young in there. People like that. But yeah, as you go further out, it seems like we've got George Harrison. We've got people that are maybe not new, but are just more tangentially related, but kind of similar singers, if not necessarily in the folk area. So yeah, that's super interesting.
It's also interesting, I think, if you go with maybe a lesser known popular band, right? Because I mean, some of the ones we've been putting in are like iconic music stars. Here's one that I remember, a band I liked a lot in my, I won't date myself, but when I was like first of music listening age, Jimmy Eat World, they kind of fly a little bit more under the radar, right? And so, this is an older band in terms of when they had their biggest success. But typing it in here, I've definitely heard of some of the bands that are related, but I've also never heard of some of these bands. And so I think, I'm sure that a true diehard fan of these bands would have heard of all of these, but this is just a band I kind of followed for a year or two. And so I think that you can really use that to discover, maybe you have more nuanced bands that you like, or you just start listening to a band, you're like, oh, I like that sound. I want to find more music like that. This is interesting. I mean, I know that it kind of reminds me of like what say Pandora would do in creating a station for you and kind of personalize it based on your thumbs ups and thumbs down, but it feels like a more visual and quick way to get to that. On these pages, by the way, not the home page, but as soon as you click in, there is one single banner ad on the left. It's like a sidebar ad. Boy, I feel like they could really monetize this a lot more and make a lot more. In terms of traffic, let's go ahead and I will share the Ahrefs graph here. It is a DR54. Let me see if I can pull it up on screen here. It is a DR54. It doesn't rank for as much as I was hoping it would. 7,500 keywords, just shy of 20,000 organic traffic. If you go and you look at what the top keywords are, they are music map and kind of all variations of that. Now, it is interesting because I also pulled up SimilarWeb, and SimilarWeb had them at a significantly higher amount, right? So Ahrefs 20,000 or under in terms of organic traffic. SimilarWeb has total traffic at 300,000, with 45% of that being organic traffic. So I don't know which one it is. We know that Ahrefs can tend to underreport, so I'm more prone to believe SimilarWeb. I mean, 300,000 in traffic, add some more ad opportunities to that. Boy, that's a sizable amount of income.
Well, firstly, I'm just going to say that one you put in with Jimmy World just brought me back to the early 2000s. Yep. Like Weezer. Like, I can't stop now having songs go through my head with that. I saw like the little emo cluster off to the side, like Death Cab for Cutie. Yep. And it's like, oh my God, yeah, it's a throwback. So yeah, I can see this being a nostalgia type of thing too. I think one thing that stood out to me, they don't have enough info content. Like they have this one, pretty much all of that ranking seemed to be just that one URL, like the main page, essentially. I didn't see a lot of, article content. It feels like with a big database like that, you could easily go in and take a programmatic SEO approach and spin out a bunch of pages that would be, if you like REM, then you'll love U2, and these are some more obscure bands to check out. And then to your point, each of those could link out through an affiliate link where you could buy merch for that band. You could buy, and it'd be so easy to do. I mean, you wouldn't even have to actually find affiliate opportunities. You could just literally link to like an Amazon search for REM merch, REM albums, whatever, for each of those. It feels like such a missed opportunity to monetize. But maybe that's not what the site is going for. It's scarily accurate. It feels like we just took, Spotify's algorithm and laid it out there visually.
Well, it's interesting because each of those pages for the bands do rank and they are indexable. And look at this. I mean, to your point, like if you look at all the traffic, it is, significantly swayed to the homepage. But here we talked about Oasis, so I'll just pull them up. They rank number 6 for the keyword bands like Oasis. I mean, I opened up the Oasis page. There's nothing but just that map, right? There's no content below the fold. Like, can you imagine if they, tried putting content below the fold and actually addressed bands like Oasis and that topic and actually tried to rank for it by using their mind map and maybe some programmatic to pull in related bands and have that internally linked to the other ones? I mean, I guess it already does internally link in the map. But anyways, yeah, it's interesting to your point. Like, it already does rank for some of these terms. It's just not really ranking in the top 3. And so for most of these, it's not ranking in the top 3. So it's not really going to get much traffic from it.
And those aren't really pages. They're just cached queries.
You're right. They're just cached queries. You're talking about turning them into actual pages.
Yeah. Actual, an article. So for the top ones, or for REM, it would be a blog post where it would say, if you like REM, here's what our system recommends. Yeah. And here's, 10 bands that you might be interested in. Check out U2. But if you want something a little bit further out there, go check out, whatever the band is that's at that. You could definitely calculate, I think, where those different cutoffs are and push people either towards the things that are super close or the things that are related but far out.
I love it. What a cool idea. So many things. We could talk about that one for a while longer. Let's move over to yours, and I will pull it up on the screen while you get going.
This one is cool. I think it's a good example of more of a classic content site. And I actually found this one when I was working on content for my Starbucks related brand.
Yes.
And so far interesting. I'll have to share it in a future update, but the YouTube channel I created for it has not done great, but I have been rolling it into a broader food-centered YouTube channel that is starting to grow. And so I've been doing more Starbucks related content. And the thing I found people really love is this concept of a copycat drink. So if you've never heard of this, the idea is, Starbucks or whoever launches a new drink, and then the community who likes these kinds of copycats immediately tries to figure out, how do you duplicate it at home? How can I make Starbucks's new sweet cherry chai or whatever it is for $1 instead of the $6 that they're going to charge me? And it's kind of equal parts recipe, it's cost savings, It's a experiential thing. Like, okay, here's the steps I took to figure it out. There's a detective work element to it. You know, how do I find ingredients that I can use at home that'll match the flavor? So it's a super interesting space. And I've really been enjoying making these videos. I've been making them with my son, even, like, basically, you know, trying to reverse engineer these drinks. And so in making the videos and doing the video content, I've been searching for them. And I found this site, which is coffeecopycat.com. And it's literally that. It's all different coffee copycat recipes. It's, again, kind of your traditional content site. Like, it's the recipe. It's talking about the owner's journey and, you know, how she discovered these. What does it taste like? How do you find the ingredients for it? Lots of beautiful photos walking through these. And it teaches you how to make all these iconic drinks from big coffee chains and coffee shops at home. So yeah, it's really well put together. It's a DR27, so it doesn't have a super huge, domain authority, but it gets about, I think, 18,000 organics per month per Hrefs. A little higher now. It actually looks like it got a healthy bump from the update. Interestingly,
it again, the March
original long form content. They are really actually flying there.
Yeah.
So good for them. But yeah, I thought it was such an interesting topic, and it feels like the kind of content that we're going to see Google elevate more and more over the course of the year.
Lots of top 5 rankings here. To your point, it's like a classic blog, like a classic content site. Yeah. It's doing well. Imagery is beautiful. I mean, I don't know. It looked very authentic. It looked like it had a very stylistic approach to it. I suppose it might not be either way. But yeah, look at all these branded terms as well. Like, kind of like you said, cookie crumble Starbucks, you know, and they ranked number 4 for it. And it's their copycat recipe for this, you know, mocha cookie crumble Frappuccino.
Yeah. And when I find something like this, it feels like an arbitrage opportunity almost. Like, it's inspiring to see, because when you come up with a new idea, you never know whether it's going to work. You're really just testing it. But when you see someone else who has really done a great job in one area or modality, like written content with visuals, this person has done an awesome job. And I'm not going to be able to compete with her on blog posts on that topic, but I'm good at doing this on YouTube. I'm good at making the videos. I'm good at, you know, that kind of content. So to me, it validates there's a lot of interest in the idea, and I'm happy to let her be the coffee copycat person in the blog space. But is this something I can take and, in my own modality of YouTube, you know, create content that I know people are interested in, and it's just going to be a different format. And so if you want to see me do it as a video, you come to my channel. If you want to see someone like this do it, you go there as a blog post. It's really exciting to see someone else succeeding and go, hey, this is something I could do without necessarily even competing with that person.
Does validate the niche. To your point, I mean, different people like it on web format, reading it. Other people like it video format, watching it. Maybe you could even collaborate with her and get your videos embedded in some of her posts, and you could reference some of her stuff. I don't know, just thinking out loud here. Well,
yeah, it's not as weird as the jewelry untangling.
No.
It's refreshing to see an actual content site that seems to be doing well.
What's weird is that you found a content site that's still ranking.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are at and a bit overtime here, so we'll stop here, folks. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us for the hour. Lots going on in the news, whether you're interested in Google, the core update, an expose in the last kind of 5-6 years and where Google is going, or maybe in some AI information, the big week that we had with AI. Hopefully you stayed around, heard about some side hustle information, and also the weird niches. We enjoyed having you. We'll see you again next week. Same place, same time. Until then, have a good weekend.